Howdy everyone, this is Norman McFadden. I come to you every Monday because I wrote a book called Urban Legends of Leaky County 1 and 2. And then I wrote The Legends of Leaper Hollow 1 and 2. I wrote for the Leaky County Journal for about 4 years. And I had a lot of interesting calls during them times. And the story today comes from the time I wrote for the paper. Of course, it's in the book. It's in our Legends of Leaky County 1. It's called the Sugar Creek Werewolf. And I'm kind of going to tell it because I lived it. I know what it is. I was there. I done it. So it was about a year after I started writing for the paper. This lady called me. Her name was Lily. She didn't want to give me her last name because she said that she didn't want her neighbors or kid folks to think she's crazy because of the story she told me. She said she was married, had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and they lived out of Troy out on Highway Y. And she said her favorite thing was walk the trails above Sugar Creek. She said every evening when her husband got home from work, she'd go and take a walk while he watched the kids. One evening he was running very late, and it was getting late and dark. She said, I ain't gonna make my walk. She said, that's gonna ruin my whole day. But she said then he came in right before it got dark. She thought she might have time to get to walk in. So she jumped in her car and she headed down to Park Road. Took Park Road straight into the park and parked straight across. When you hit the Park Road, the main road, you go straight across and there's a parking lot there. And she said, you walk down them trails, that trail, it'll go down a big hill, then up another big hill and down, and about halfway down the other hill, there's a trail veers off to your left. And she said, you take that trail and it'll take you above Sugar Creek. You're probably about 30 feet, maybe above the creek on the cliffs. And she said that day she was running kind of late because of her husband. And she got to the top of the cliff. She sat down on a rock to take a break. And she was looking down at Sugar Creek, and all of a sudden she heard some noise from the far side of the creek. Said she looked down there, and she said the strangest thing she ever seen in her life was coming out of them woods there, walking like a dog on its all fours. And she said, believe it or not, it was half man and half wolf. And she said, as soon as it got to the edge of the water, it stood up on its hind feet and walked into the water. And she darted behind a tree to hide a little bit. Said she stood there behind that tree watching this thing, and it was splashing in the water. She said it looked like it was trying to catch a fish or something. She didn't know. She said, but then all of a sudden his nose went straight skyway, just looking up and sniffing. And she said it sniffed and turned its head until it seen her right at that tree. It looked directly at her. And she said his eyes was red as something that just came from the pits of hell. And she said that thing spotted her and it jumped halfway up them cliffs, started climbing. She said she just happened to remember that she put her 22 in her backpack, 22 pistol, so she dragged it out. Said she shot that thing twice in the chest, and when she knew it hit it, it fell. It fell back in the water, and it behaved like it was hurt really bad. But then all of a sudden it pulled itself up to the bank, she said, and stood up on its hind feet and let out the howl. Like, woo! Like she'd never heard before. She said it chilled her to the bone. That thing's just, that howl, she said, she still echoes in her ear. But she said she'd seen the blood in the water, so she knew it was hit. It dropped back to its all fours and ran back out in the woods which it came from. And she said the moment it ran back in the woods, she ran it all the way to her car. I mean, she said she just run as fast as she could, got in her car and drove home. And she said she's never, since that happened, been back to them trails. I said, okay, thank you very much for the story. And after we hung up, I was sitting there, I said, that's kind of weird. I don't know if, I deal in the weird. I deal in the legends and stuff, but I just need a little more information on this one before I proceeded. So I started asking around town if anybody heard any tales about a werewolf out in Sugar Creek. And I went in my print shop where I have all my papers printed, and this lady there, she said, oh yeah, she said, me and a group of kids when I was young went out there and see if we could find him, never did find it. So I just kind of let it simmer for a while until I could figure out more information on it. About a week ago, I got a call from a guy named Billy Dorman. Now, he said he didn't care as I used his last name because half of the people around here thinks he's crazy anyway. He said he'd retired from McDonnell Douglas, and he said spend most of his time gathering fossil rocks. And he hit a lot of the creeks. And he said he liked for it to rain the day before so it turns over the rocks in the creek. The water does. So he said it rained real good the night before he went, and he went down to KK, came down KK to the bridge at Sugar Creek, parked his car, and he said it was getting kind of late, but he figured he'd be all right. He knew the area real good. And he said he was walking up the creek and he'd found a couple really nice fossil rocks. And he got up to where the water turns deep. That's the same where Lily was. And the cliff was around 20 to 30 feet high. And he said he was standing there, could get kind of dark, the moon was full. And he would shine his light along the creek, trying to see if there are any fossil rocks. And he said all of a sudden he heard some howling coming from up the creek. He said he didn't know what it was. Didn't sound like a wolf, didn't sound like a dog. He looked up there and he said something was coming down that creek. So he said he darted over into the weeds and laid flat down in the weeds so he couldn't be seen. He said it came right on down the creek and it stopped right there at the deep part of the water on the edge of the bank, and it let out a howl. He said then it stuck his nose up in the air and started sniffing. He thought for sure, he said that thing's going to sniff me out and eat me. But he said it didn't. It finally put his nose back down, walked on back in the water and started splashing around. She said he didn't know he was trying to catch fish or take a bath. He said he didn't really care. He just wanted it to leave so he could get the heck out of there. He said that thing splashed and played in the water for about 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden he's lost his interest in it. The wolf did, and he walked back to the bank. He let out a big yell, big howl, and he headed back up the creek. And he said he watched it until it got out of sight. And he said the moment it got out of sight, he jumped up out of the weeds and ran all the way back to his car and headed back home to where it's safe. And he said, I was the first one he's told about this. He said, nobody knows about it but you. You're the first one I told. So, all right, now this was 2 people told me they'd seen it. And somebody in town heard the legend. So it's time for me to go check it out. So I got all my stuff packed in my backpack, and I headed down to KK and parked my car there at Sugar Creek, same place Billy did. And I started going southeast up the creek, just the same way Billy did. I got up there, and I had a strange feeling that something was watching me throughout the woods. All the time I was walking up through there, I had a strange feeling. Something watching me. I just felt it, eyes up on me. But I got up there where the water turns deep and the big cliffs are. And I noticed when I looked up at the cliffs that there had a few caves in them cliffs where a bear could stay or something. Because I was thinking they seen a bear. Did I think I was going to see a werewolf? Nah. Them are fiction, aren't they? I don't know. They could be this thing. I'd seen some weird stuff in my life. But I set up my tent, got a nice fire going before it got dark, and it was a full moon. And I was sitting there by the fire, and all of a sudden I heard a "Woo!" I said, well, that's a wolf or something. So I went in the tent, got in my little backpack, and got my flashlight. I said, I'm going to have to go investigate, find out what it is. And I went over into the woods where it was, where I heard it at, shining my flashlight around. As soon as I shined the flashlight out, I heard another woo, woo, up on the hill, up on them big cliffs. I said, there ain't nothing can move that quick. From here to there, and the time it took me to get my flashlight, they gotta be 2 at least. Gotta be. So I went and threw some more sticks on the fire, got it going real good. Laid in my tent with the door unzipped so I could keep a good eye out there just in case I seen something. That howling and stuff went on all night. That just, I mean, they was one on one side of me and one on the other side of me, and then one on the cliff. Whatever it was everywhere. Of course, I could never see them, could never get a good glimpse of them. Next morning when the sun come up, I came out of the tent and I was looking around the soft sand, because they was all around my tent, whatever it was, and it looked like dog prints. There was some big ones too. Now I'm telling you something. If you got a dog and it's tame and you dump it out and it goes wild again, it's the most dangerous thing in the woods because it's not scared of humans. It is not scared at all. So I've seen at least 6 prints, different prints of dogs. So I think there's a pack of wild dogs out there on Sugar Creek. Now I ain't saying that's probably not what Lily and Billy see, but they are a pack of wild dogs out there. Now if I decided to just pack up my stuff and go on back to my car and write the story, which I did. Now, if you're up there around Sugar Creek, around the deep part of the water where the cliffs are, you might run onto a pack of wild dogs. And be careful because they're very dangerous. Or you might even run onto a werewolf. Be very careful. This is Norman McFadden signing off. Till next time. God bless y'all.